Okay, so let's get started. And as usual, we will begin with some prayers, and then we'll spend a bit of time generating a positive motivation for being here, and then we will move into the class. Okay, so during the recitation of the prayers, if you can and if you wish, it's nice to imagine that you're in the presence of the Buddha, and you can also imagine not just one Buddha, but many Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, if that's comfortable for you. Because as Lama Zopa Rinpoche says, all the time, wherever we are, there are many Buddhas and Bodhisattvas around us, and they're aware of us, they're looking at us with compassion in their minds and their hearts. They're completely concerned about us, wanting us to be happy, wanting us to be free of suffering, ready to help us, to guide us, so that we can achieve genuine happiness and freedom from suffering. So if you find that idea inspiring, you're comfortable with it, then imagine at least one Buddha in front of you, Shakyamuni Buddha, but you can also imagine many other Buddhas and Bodhisattvas around. And so the first prayer is taking refuge in the Buddha, his teachings, the Dharma, the Sangha, those who follow these teachings, especially those who've gained a high realization of wisdom, realizing the ultimate nature of things. So they're beings we can rely upon in order to find our way out of suffering and to find our way to genuine happiness. So if that's comfortable for you, think that you're taking refuge in, or another way of saying that would be putting yourself under the guidance of the Buddha, the Dharma, the Sangha, the three jewels, and doing this not just for your own sake, your own happiness, your own well-being, but keeping in mind that there are many other beings all wanting happiness just like us and wanting to be free of suffering just like us, and opening your heart to them and wanting to help them. And so our reason, ideally, for learning the Dharma and practicing the Dharma is to help not just oneself, this one person who I am, but to help all other living beings as well, help them find their way along the path to freedom from suffering and to full enlightenment. So try to generate those thoughts, those states of mind as you recite these prayers. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my practice of giving and other perfections, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my practice of giving and other perfections, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my practice of giving and other perfections, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. And then the four immeasurable thoughts is an extension of that open-heartedness towards other living beings. Just going into more detail with what that means, wishing them to be happy, wishing them to be free of suffering, wishing them to have happiness that's free of suffering. That's the happiness of fortunate rebirths in all their future lives, and eventually liberation. So real, genuine happiness. And then wishing them to have equanimity, for their minds to be free from the twin disturbing emotions of attachment, clinging to some people and beings, and aversion or hatred or anger towards other people and beings. So really wishing this for ourselves and all other living beings. May all sentient beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all sentient beings be inseparable from the happiness that is free from suffering. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free from attachment for friends and hatred for enemies. The 7 limb prayer, the next prayer, contains 7 different practices in one prayer. And these 7 practices, some of them are for accumulating merit or positive energy, which we need to be able to progress along the path. Some of them are for purifying or clearing away negative energy from our past unwise, unskillful actions, and also the disturbing thoughts and emotions that pop up into our mind. So whatever is negative in our body, speech, and mind, clearing that away. So these are complementary practices, supplementary practices to help us in our study and our meditation on the path to enlightenment. Reverently, I prostrate with my body, speech, and mind. I present clouds of every type of offering, actual and imagined. I declare all my negative actions accumulated since beginningless time and rejoice in the merit of all holy and ordinary beings. Please remain until the end of cyclic existence and turn the wheel of Dharma for living beings. I dedicate my own merits and those of all others to the great enlightenment. And then the mandala offering is mentally offering the whole universe, all that is beautiful and precious, enjoyable in this world and everywhere in the universe, imagining all these things collected together, transformed into a pure land, and offered to the Buddha, to objects of refuge, and dedicating this that all living beings will be able to enjoy a pure land. This ground anointed with perfume, strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, 4 continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha field and offer it. May all living beings enjoy this pure land. Idam Guru Ratna Mandala Kamniyatayami. Now let's recite the mantra of the Buddha a few times. And again, thinking of the Buddha there in front of you, and imagine light flowing from the Buddha. You can imagine the light radiating in all directions, going to all sentient beings throughout space. But in particular, imagine it coming into you and filling your body and mind completely, down to the tiniest particles, atoms and subatomic particles that make up your body, and also filling your mind and clearing away negative thoughts, negative energy, so all kinds of problems, obstacles that we may have, physical and mental. These get cleared away, and our mind gets kind of blessed or nourished so that the positive qualities, understandings, realizations we need to progress along the path and become like the Buddha himself, that these can grow, bringing us more quickly to that state of enlightenment. Tayata Om Muni Muni Maha Muni Soha. Tayata Om Muni Muni Maha Muni Soha. Tayata Om Muni Muni Maha Muni Soha. So really try to make sure that your attitude, your motivation for being here, participating in this session or listening to this talk is an altruistic one, that you go beyond self-centered thinking, feeling I am the most important person in the universe, I am the center of everything, I'm the only one who matters, I just want to take care of myself and my happiness. So try to let go of or put aside that kind of attitude and open your heart, open your mind to other beings. They are important too. We're all important. In the eyes of the Buddha, the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, they see every sentient being as equally important, equally deserving of their attention and their compassion and their kindness and their work to help us, to guide us. So we are all equal because we all have the Buddha nature. We are all potential Buddhas. Our true nature, the true nature of our mind, of our being is pure. And the things that prevent us from being enlightened, such as the three poisonous states of mind, attachment, aversion, ignorance, and other afflictive emotions, disturbing emotions, and our karma, negative karma, and so on. So these things are temporary, transitory. They're not who we really are, how we really are. They're like pollution that got into our mind, and they can be removed, just like pollution can disappear from the air and from water. So this internal pollution in our mind can disappear, can be purified, and then our mind will be able to attain the enlightened mind, fully enlightened mind, just like the Buddha. So there's no one who can't become a Buddha, no one who doesn't have that potential. So the Buddhas can see that, and that's why they can see that every living being is deserving of their attention, compassion, kindness, and help. So even though that may be hard for us to see at this point in time, but maybe you can imagine one day in the future, I will be able to see sentient beings in that way as well. I'll be able to have a completely open mind and open heart and care about all of them. So it's good to at least try to do that now. Start working on having that state of mind and think that that's my reason for being here, for learning about the Lam Rim, the path to enlightenment. It's so that I can develop my own potential for enlightenment, bringing myself to that state of enlightenment. And then, just like the Buddhas, work for the benefit of all other living beings and help all of them reach enlightenment as well. Okay, so we will continue. And last week I spoke about anger. This is one of the so-called 3 poisons or mental toxins. A state of mind that we all have, at least sometimes, and it's poisonous. It poisons our mind, it can poison our relationships, our life, creating suffering, creating problems. And I explained some antidotes, things we can do to work on decreasing our anger when it does arise in our mind. And I had planned to talk about attachment last week, but I ran out of time. So I will start today with that explanation. So if we could have the slides on the screen, the next page. So first, let me explain what is meant by attachment. It's also sometimes called desire or clinging or craving, grasping. So there's different terms, and also there's different degrees of this. Starting with just a mild level of, attachment to something like coffee, up to, strong addiction, where you kind of go crazy if you can't have your substance, the substance you're addicted to, like heroin or alcohol or whatever. But probably our biggest object of attachment is with people, other people. And also many people may not see any problem with that. They may think, well, that's normal, to have attachment to your family members, especially your children. If you're a parent, having attachment to your children. Some people even believe that it's necessary. If you didn't have attachment to your children, you wouldn't take care of them. They would be neglected, and then, that wouldn't be good for them. So let me explain what attachment is according to Buddhism, so we can identify it. So it's a mental factor. It's a factor, an aspect of our mind. It arises towards an object. And when we use the term object, the object could be a person, a living being, another human being, or, a pet, for example. You can get very attached to your pets. So it could be a living being, but it could also be some material object, your phone or computer or car, money, food. And it can also be things that are more abstract, like certain experiences, nice feelings, even in meditation. If you get nice feelings, nice experiences in your practice of meditation, and you can get attached to those. Attachment to knowledge, learning, and so on. So many things we can get attached to. So the object that we get attached to is something that appears pleasant or attractive. And then what happens is, after seeing the object as attractive, the mind exaggerates the attractiveness of the object. This isn't, I don't think this is something we do deliberately, consciously. It's just a habit, an automatic thing that happens in our mind. So we exaggerate the object, the good qualities of the object. And we may even project things onto the object that aren't even there. Things that we want to be there, but may not be there. So we're sort of projecting, adding on more good qualities that may not actually be there. So our mind sort of builds up an image of the object as something really wonderful, really fantastic, maybe even 100% wonderful, perfect, beautiful, fantastic. And we also tend to see that this object is a source of happiness for me. This is something that will bring me happiness, which is what we want. Yeah, we are looking for happiness. We want happiness. So we kind of focus on that object. That will bring me happiness. That will make me happy. And so then naturally we feel, I want it. So that's attachment. Attachment is wanting to hold on to some object that we find attractive. And there's a lot of exaggeration involved in how we see that object. Like, we can see the object as completely fantastic and there's no faults at all. Nothing that would disappoint us. It's like, just what I want, just what I need, absolutely perfect. And it won't bring me any unhappiness. It will only bring me happiness. So this is kind of what's going on in our mind on an automatic level. And so then we want that object. We want to own the object. We want to have it there as much as possible, even, become very possessive about it and not want to separate from it and want it to be there forever. So those are the kind of things that are going on in our mind when there's attachment. And all of this can happen just in a couple of seconds. Yeah, if you pay attention, you might notice this. For example, when you see some attractive person, just within a couple of seconds, your mind can go through this whole process and think, I want that. That will make me happy. Or if you're walking through a shopping mall and you see something in a window of a shop, and again, the mind can just go, I want that. That will make me happy. And pretty soon you're walking into the shop, pulling out your wallet or checkbook or whatever. Okay, so that's attachment. And like I say, there can also be different levels, different degrees of it. So the first antidote here is recognize how it leads to problems, for example, in relationships and to other afflictive emotions. So this is an important step because I think with anger and jealousy, it's easier to recognize that, that kind of attitude is really painful. It doesn't feel good at all. Whereas attachment is more difficult to see the faults of. It can feel really good. It seems to bring us happiness. It seems to connect us with sources of pleasure, people and food and music and movies. So it seems to be necessary for our happiness. Yeah. And, but according to Buddhism, attachment is a poisonous state of mind. It's an afflictive emotion, a disturbing emotion. It leads to suffering, to problems. So we need to think about that because it may not be so obvious. So one way we can look at how it brings problems is if we think about past experiences or or maybe present experiences of relationship problems, which can be so painful, so incredibly painful. I mean, it's maybe the biggest problem in people's life is having problems in a relationship, especially a very close, intimate relationship. So if you kind of analyze, examine, or do an autopsy on relationship problems, and try to figure out, why did that happen? How did that happen? You'll most probably recognize there was attachment involved. Because when we get into a relationship, another thing that happens is we tend to have expectations of the other person. These are usually unwritten, unspoken, just inside our heart. Yeah, we have a whole list of expectations. And we may think that our expectations are reasonable, like this person should always be nice to me, this person should always treat me well, this person should always be in a good mood, always pleasant to be with, and so on and so forth. So we have these expectations of the other person. And as long as they live up to our expectations, then we're happy. We're happy with them. But if they don't fulfill our expectations, if they don't do what we want them to do, they aren't the way we want them to be, they do something we don't want them to do, or they're in a mood and a state of mind that we don't like. So in other words, they're not living up to our expectations. They're not doing what I want them to do. Then we get upset. We get angry, and that can lead to quarrels and even breakup of relationships. So that's something to investigate. Yeah, you have to look at that in yourself. And also you can look at your friends and family members, the kind of problems they have in relationships, and try to recognize if attachment is there. Okay, so it leads to problems in relationships. It can also lead to other afflictive emotions, like anger, like the example that I just gave. When we get angry at people, it's often because there was this attachment, these expectations. We wanted them to be a certain way, do certain things, not do other things. And then they didn't do that. And so we get angry at them. Or if we're attached to our possessions, material things, and then somebody damages or doesn't treat the way we want them to be treated, then we can get angry about that. So again, if we examine experiences, situations of getting angry, most of the time anger is at other people. Sometimes we may get angry at material things. I heard about this guy, I think he was in Colorado somewhere, and he got angry at his computer because it was malfunctioning, and he just got so frustrated and angry, he took it out in the backyard and took out his gun and shot his computer. So it's possible to get angry at material things or at the weather, but probably most of the time our anger is at other people. So when we have experiences of anger, situations of being angry at somebody else, we can examine that, do an autopsy on that, and we'll probably discover there's attachment there. That, we have attachment to that person, or attachment to things, or attachment to experiences, and something got in the way of what we wanted, how we wanted things to be. So then we get angry. And another emotion that can arise is fear. Yeah, so it's almost inevitable that attachment leads to fear, because attachment says, I want this, and I don't want to be separated from it, and I want it to be there forever because I need it. My happiness depends on it. So then that can lead to fear. What if this person leaves me? What if this person stops loving me? What if this person falls in love with somebody else and isn't there for me anymore? Or with children, what if something happens to my child? Or our material things, what if something happens to it? So there's fear. We may not always be aware of that fear, but if we watch our mind, pay attention to our mind, we'll probably notice. There's fear there, fear of losing what we are attached to, or something happening to something we're attached to. Now, a certain amount of fear is healthy. Yeah, I mean, if you're attached to your child, of course you don't want your child to meet with suffering or with death. So then you'll take care of your child and teach your child, don't touch the hot stove, don't run into the street without looking, and so on. So a certain amount of fear is healthy and necessary. But sometimes fear can become excessive. People can be almost constantly in a state of fear, their mind creating all these worst case scenarios, and then maybe they can't even sleep at night because they're worried about things that will happen, which may be very unlikely to happen. So a certain amount of fear can help us to live our life, arrange things, to try to prevent these terrible things happening. But if we're constantly in a state of fear, then that's excessive and that's unhealthy. And then, attachment, in a way, it sets us up for suffering. Because we have this state of mind, I want this object to always be there and never change and never go away, never disappear. But that's impossible because of impermanence, which is number 2 on the list. We'll look at that next. But yeah, it's just the nature of things that they are impermanent. They change. We can't stop things from changing. And not only do things change, but eventually at some point they go out of existence. They're not there anymore. We will not be here anymore. So it's just inevitable that there will be separation from our objects of attachment. Now, a lot of people don't want to think about that. They completely push that thought out of their mind. And they think that's morbid, that's depressing. I don't want to think about that. But Buddha said we should think about it because it's going to happen. And it's better to think about it now and prepare ourselves for the inevitable. And then we'll be ready for it when it happens. But if we never allow ourselves to think about it and we continuously live with this idea, I am going to be here forever, my loved ones are going to be there forever, my life is going to be just the way it is forever and ever and ever. That's just delusion. That's living in a bubble, living in a fantasy land. And it's just setting ourselves up for suffering, because then when the bubble bursts, somebody dies or they leave us or some cherished object breaks down or we just can't have it anymore because it's become too expensive or whatever, we're going to have tremendous suffering, tremendous pain. So if we recognize that danger of attachment and want to avoid it, then we can work on decreasing our attachment. So these are some of the faults or dangers of attachment. And you can look in your experience and find others as well. Now, with regard to relationships, I could see somebody asked a question about can attachment ever be positive? Well, yeah, the example here is attachment to the teachings. Attachment to the Dharma, that's a good question. I mean, I think we all go through that. We get attached to our spiritual teachers. We can get attached to meditation. We can get attached to Dharma teachings. Yes. Our Dharma books, our Dharma objects, our prayer beads, our Buddha statue. Yes, we can get attached to those. Can this be positive? Well, what I usually say about that is it's better than attachment to movie stars or money or food. I mean, if you're going to be attached to something, at least it's a healthy kind of attachment, because if you have attachment to Dharma, then you'll keep going again and again to want to learn more Dharma, study more Dharma, practice more Dharma, listen to teachings and so on. So at least that kind of attachment is helping us go in the right direction. But it can still lead to problems. You know, it happens a lot in Dharma circles where there's a teacher, a wonderful teacher, and the students can get very attached to that teacher. But with attachment, then you want attention. Yeah, often there's this wish, I want the teacher to pay attention to me. I want to spend time with the teacher. I want to get close to the teacher. And that can lead to jealousy. If you see some other student who's spending more time with the teacher, getting more attention, getting closer to the teacher, that can lead to jealousy, which is that's another ugly state of mind, another poisonous state of mind. And then you can't always have that attention or that time or that closeness with the teacher. And so then you suffer from that. So we do have to watch out for attachment, even to Dharma teachers, even to Dharma teachings. So attachment to Dharma teachings could also lead to problems. For example, if you have, let's say you have a family, maybe you have a partner, you have children, and if you get overly attached to Dharma, you might neglect your family. And then they would suffer, and that could lead to problems and quarrels and so on. Or another problem that could happen is if somebody says something insulting about the Dharma, if someone shows disrespect or makes critical comments about Buddhism, then you could get really angry and get into fights, quarrels with that person. Yeah, so attachment, even to the Dharma, even to Dharma teachers, even to Dharma practice, can lead to problems. So it's not good, and it is something to look out for. It is something we need to decrease. Be aware of it and work on decreasing it. Attachment to, another question here is views, opinions. Yeah, this is also something we can get attached to. My point of view, my political party, I want the world to be a certain way, or I want my country to be a certain way. I want the government to be a certain way. I mean, it's good to have the wish for people to behave in a nice way. It's to have our government behave in a nice way, to have policies that are, according to our views of things. I mean, we can have those points of view and work for those points of view, vote for certain candidates and, sign petitions and so on, get involved to try to bring about things the way we would like. And we, not just that we like, but we feel are most beneficial for the most number of people. So it's good to have those views and try to bring them about, try to support them. But if we have excessive attachment to them, then again, that leads to problems, because things may not turn out the way we want. And then we could get extremely disappointed and depressed. Like, for example, in my own case, back in 2016, when I heard the results of the US presidential election, I was shocked. and devastated and depressed. You know, I spent a whole day feeling depressed, feeling despair. What is going to happen to our country? And but then I pulled myself out of that. I said, you know, I cannot control the world, even though I would like things to be a certain way that, you know, I think would be beneficial for the most number of people. But I am not able to control the world, to control people, to control situations. I can't always make things happen the way I want them to. And so we have to let go and accept, you know, there's so many other people in the world, so many other ideas, so many other causes and conditions. It's just how it is in samsara. You know, we can't make samsara perfect the way we would like it to be. We just have to step back and accept that. And then what I said to myself was, okay, I can't change the world. I can't change my country. I can't change things out there, but I can change myself. That's what I can do. That's what is doable. I can continue my own study, my practice, living my life the way I feel is right, helping other people as much as I can. That's what I can do. Nobody can stop me from doing that, even if so-and-so became the president. They can't stop me from living my life the way I believe is you know, is important for me, important for others. And so I said, okay, I'm just going to keep going like that. I'm just doing the best that I can, what I can do, and yeah, not expect that I can change other people. Yeah, so attachment, even attachment to opinions and ideas and so on, can lead to problems. Internal problems like getting depressed if things don't turn out the way we want them to be, getting into arguments with other people, getting angry. Yeah, getting angry because we don't like what this person is doing or what that government is doing and so on. So that's why I say attachment can lead to other afflictive emotions if we're not careful. And if you look at the time of the Buddha, yeah, I mean, the Buddha, at that point in time, as I understand it, there were lots of quarrels and wars, even. His own clan, the Sakya clan that he came from, went to war with a neighboring clan. And he stepped in and managed to get the two sides to put down their arms and not fight. So he was successful at that point in time, but I think there was another occasion where he was not able to stop a war from happening. And so I think, if I remember correctly, his whole clan, many of the members of his clan were killed in a war. So I doubt if the Buddha got depressed about that or angry about that. You know, he probably just understood this is the world, this is samsara, because people's minds, beings' minds are full of afflictive thoughts and emotions like ignorance, attachment, anger, karma, and so on. This is what he managed to free himself from and then explain to others how they could do it as well. But yeah, if people don't follow those teachings and don't work on their minds and overcome their afflictive emotions and instead follow their afflictive emotions, then this is what happens. So we just do the best we can to help others, but our main job is helping ourselves. Our main job is working on our own mind, our own afflictive emotions, freeing ourselves from those. Then we're in a better position to help others. Okay, so the next bullet point, number 2, is contemplate death and impermanence. So I did talk about that already, that, you know, we need to wake up to the reality that we are going to die, everyone else is going to die. And even before death happens, things will change. There'll be a lot of changes that happen in our life, in the lives of others, in the material things that we own and use. So this is just the nature of things, that they change. And so the more we get familiar with that and comfortable with that, the less attachment we will have. So this is, for me, this is the best antidote to attachment. Because otherwise, like I was saying before, if we live in this bubble and thinking, oh, I want everything to last forever, I want to be here forever, I want others to be here forever, that's just crazy. Just creating the cause for suffering. That's a bit like a little child who blows a bubble, the bubbles, soap bubbles, yeah. So they blow this bubble and think, oh, it's so pretty, and they want it to last. They don't want it to disappear. But of course, after a few seconds, the bubble bursts and disappears, and then the child cries. So as adults, we look at that and we think, oh, this is so sad. Can't they realize that the bubble's not going to last? But we're the same, even though our bubbles, the things that we're attached to, may last longer than a soap bubble. But still, sooner or later, they're going to burst. They're going to disappear. Okay, so the Buddha really recommended the importance of meditating on impermanence and death and coming to accept that is the reality of things. That's how things are. That will really undermine our attachment to things. Just realize it's silly, it's crazy to be attached to things that aren't going to last. The third bullet point is bring to mind faults of the object so that you see it in a more balanced, realistic way. So that might sound kind of drastic. But the thing is, when we have attachment to a person or an object, we tend to only focus on the good qualities and how wonderful it is and how it's going to make me happy. And so we have an exaggerated, unrealistic view and overlook or even deny that there's any faults of the object. So it's helpful to deliberately think about the faults, that it's not 100% perfect. And it will have, for example, a car, if you have the wish to buy a beautiful, wonderful car, and you're just all full of fantasies about how wonderful it will be to have that car and drive around in that car. Well, it's helpful to remember the other side of it. Cars break down, they get into accidents, they're expensive. And next year, a new model will come out and your model will look old and not so great anymore. So just to remind yourself, you might still go ahead and buy that car, but you'll do it with a more realistic state of mind rather than a kind of overblown, fantasized state of mind. So the point is not to develop aversion or hatred for the object, but just to see it in a more balanced way. It has some good qualities, yes, but it also has some faults. It's not perfect. And the third one is, does my happiness really depend on this object? So this is, this is questioning, because attachment, that's what attachment is saying. I need this object in order to be happy. I can't be happy without this object. That's like what the lyrics of love songs often say, things like that. If you leave me, I will never be happy again. Things like that. So, so that's attachment. That's what attachment says. Is that true? Is that really true? For example, before you met that person or before you had that object, did you ever have happiness? You probably experienced happiness even before you met that person, before you had that object. You knew how to be happy. So even if that person leaves or dies, or you don't have that object anymore, it's possible. You may go through a period of grief, sadness, but eventually you'll be able to find happiness again. So this is challenging an unrealistic idea that comes with attachment. attachment saying, I need that object to be happy. I can't be happy without it. So check that if that's true or not. And hopefully you recognize it's not true. It's a lie. it's a misinformation, fake news. Okay, so those are some antidotes to attachment, but you can also explore and find others that work for you, or, in reading books, Dharma books, you'll find other antidotes. So the point is, when attachment does arise in your mind, investigate it, analyze it, check to see if it's helpful, healthy, realistic, or not. And if you can recognize it's not something healthy and you want to work on decreasing it, then these are methods. Also, for the spiritual path, if we want to achieve higher states of mind, like enlightenment, nirvana, and even realizations like calm abiding, single-pointed concentration, attachment is a huge obstacle. You can probably notice it when you're trying to meditate. You're trying to concentrate your mind on the breath or whatever you're meditating on. And it's so difficult because all these other thoughts come up, distracting your attention. And much of the time, it's attachment. We remember past events, past experiences that were so pleasant, and we want to go back and re-experience those. It's attachment. Or we fantasize about future ones. Next week I'm going to this wonderful place and I'm going to meet such and such person and we're going to have such a good time. You get totally carried away in a fantasy. It's attachment. So most of the time when our mind wanders, gets distracted, when we're trying to meditate, or trying to study, trying to focus on anything, it's usually because of attachment. So then it makes it very difficult to develop concentration. And without concentration, we won't be able to achieve these other higher states of mind. Okay, so the point I'm trying to make is attachment is a problem, something we need to work on, and there are methods, antidotes. But it is hard, and don't expect you can free yourself from attachment very quickly or easily, because the real antidote, the ultimate antidote, is the wisdom realizing emptiness. That's the thing that will eliminate attachment once and for all. But that takes time. So in the meantime, it'll still be there, it'll be coming up, and so we just need to work on it. Okay, so the next slide is 6 causes of delusions. This is not mentioned in the book, The Easy Path, but it is mentioned in Lama Tsong Khapa's Lam Rim Chenmo, the great stages of the path to enlightenment. And Lama Yeshe once gave a talk about this, and you can find an edited version of that talk in the book, Wisdom Energy. You might be able to find it on Lama Yeshe Wisdom Archives as well. It's a very nice talk. So these are 6. So if you ever wonder, why is it that anger comes up in our mind, attachment comes up, jealousy comes up? I don't want these things in my mind. So why do they keep coming? Okay, so this is the answer. So these are 6 different factors that cause delusions to arise in our mind. The first one is the basis. That's the technical term. And what that refers to is seeds in our mind, seeds of delusions. Now, don't think of literal physical seeds like we plant flower seeds or vegetable seeds to grow things, but they're like seeds. They're not physical things, but they are imprints left by previous experiences of those same delusions. So, for example, anger. Every time we get angry every time anger comes up in our mind. It may last a few seconds or a few minutes or a few hours, eventually goes away, but it leaves seeds of anger. So these seeds are there in our mind, and then when conditions are right, we meet with a situation that kind of waters those seeds, they pop up and cause another experience of anger. So it's similar with what happens in nature, like a tree or a bush or a plant itself grew from a seed that was planted or just fell in the soil. Okay, so that seed gave rise to the new plant or the new tree. And then that plant or that tree, in turn, at a certain time of the year, usually in the spring or summer, produces more seeds, which fall in the ground or get carried away by the wind. And then from them come new plants or new trees of the same type. So it's similar in our mind. One type of delusion, like anger or attachment, arises in our mind. And why it arises is because we had the seed for it in our mind. Where that seed came from was a previous experience of that same emotion. And that came from another one and another one and another one. Okay, and then when that delusion arises in our mind now in the present, again, it leaves a seed in the mind that will produce another of the same kind of delusion in the future. When I heard that explanation, I found that really so helpful, so powerful to understand, oh, that's why I got angry, because I had anger before and before and before and before and before, going way, way back into our past lives. So what we can do about this one is try not to produce more seeds. We already have lots of seeds of delusions in our mind, just waiting to ripen. But let's at least try not to produce more. Now, for the seeds to be totally cleared away, get rid of all those seeds so that they're gone, that takes a realization of emptiness. So that's not something we can do anytime soon, but at least we can try not to produce more seeds. And how do we do that? By trying not to let delusions come up and take over our mind, trying not to let our mind get deluded. So how we can do that is by working with the remaining causes. So number 2, the second cause is object. So there's always an object towards whom or which we generate a delusion. There's always an object of anger, an object of attachment, an object of jealousy. And the object could be a person, a living being, or it could be something material. So this is something to pay attention to in our experience. What kind of objects trigger certain delusions? Okay. And there's certain people we get angry at, certain people we have attachment to, or certain things, material things. And so if we pay attention to that and we notice, if I see that person, or if I'm around that person, or if I think about that person, anger comes up in my mind. So I have to be very careful. If I don't want anger to come up in my mind, which will produce more seeds of anger, then I have to try to stay away from that object. Or at least, if I can't completely stay away from it, at least be very careful when I'm around it. Be careful about my mind. Try not to let my mind react with that delusion. So, for example, people who are alcoholic, because I have a couple of family members who have that problem. And if they want to stop drinking alcohol and, not even, have the temptation, then they just don't go to bars. I mean, you don't go to a bar. You don't go to a place where there's alcohol. You don't have alcohol in your house. Because if the object is there, it will trigger off that craving to have alcohol. So it's better to just stay away from it. Okay. So then the third one is society. Society means the people we associate with. We're very much influenced by other people. So you probably noticed this. If there's, say, a person who has a lot of anger, gets angry a lot, and if you spend time with that person, then you might find yourself getting angry too. I mean, it's not that their anger has come into you. Don't think like that. They haven't forced you to get angry, but rather we have the seeds of anger in our mind. They're already there. And being with that person and, observing them being angry, hearing them talk in an angry way and so on, that's like watering our seeds, putting water on our seeds. So then, our seeds ripen and anger comes up in our mind. Same with attachment. Okay, if there's people who have a lot of attachment and are really following their attachment, engaging in attachment, and if we spend time with those people, we might find ourselves having more attachment too. Not that they made us have attachment, but being close to them has that effect of kind of watering our seeds of attachment. So if you really want to work on your delusions and decrease them and not have them coming up a lot in your mind, then be careful about who you associate with, who you spend time with. And the opposite is true. If we want to have more positive qualities, more kindness, more patience, more humility, more detachment or non-attachment, then it's good to be with people who are like that. That's why they say it's very important to have spiritual teachers and spiritual friends and spend time with them, associate with them. And you probably notice that as well. When you're with people who have those positive qualities, you become more like that yourself. Okay? Because we have the seeds of those positive qualities in ourselves. We have positive seeds as well, seeds of kindness, seeds of compassion. And when we're spending time with people who are kind and are compassionate, then that waters our seeds. So those qualities come up more. So be very careful about who you spend time with. And if you can't completely avoid people who have negative habits, like they may be your family members, and it wouldn't be nice to avoid them. So we do need to spend time with those people, but just be very, very careful when you are with them. Notice what kind of effect it has on your mind. Try not to let your mind get caught up in those same afflictive emotions, and try not to spend too much time with them. Don't overdo it. Number 3 is explanations. So this, in the traditional teachings, this was explained as wrong teachings. Yeah, so if there's people who are giving teachings, but what they're teaching is misinformation, is causing delusions to increase rather than to decrease, making you more deluded, more afflicted. That's an example of that. But nowadays we have so many sources of information. There's books, there's newspapers, magazines, and of course the media, TV, radio, the internet, social media. It's just a huge amount of information coming in. And some of that information could nourish our seeds of delusions. For example, a gross example with violent movies or computer games, or any kind of information about violence and war and killing. So if you pay attention to that, watching those kind of movies or reading books like that, you'll probably notice it increases violent thoughts in yourself. Yeah. So take a look at that. Observe that in your own experience and try to, again, if you want to work on decreasing your afflictive emotions, avoid information, sources of information or entertainment that increase those delusions, and instead pay attention to information, sources of information that help increase your positive qualities, your kindness, your love, your ethical conduct, and so on. Number 5 is habit or habitual tendencies, or you could also call it neural pathways, because they explain this in brain science. So this is just habit. If we do one kind of action, or we have one kind of thought coming up in our mind, then it's very easy for it to happen again. Yeah, an angry thought comes up, and that kind of leaves a tendency to have another angry thought, and then another angry thought, and another one, and another one, and then so on. So it becomes habitual tendencies. So this is also something you can observe in your experience. And I mean, probably most of us already have habitual tendencies, things that we started when we were small children. And part of it may have been because of our family, our education, our society. So we learned how to think certain ways, how to feel certain ways, how to behave in certain ways. And that just became a habit. And it's just so easy to do it again and again and again. But it can't, it can be changed. It can be broken. We can always stop habits and develop new habits. Okay, so for example, if you have a habit of being critical or blaming or complaining, expressing critical remarks all the time. So it's just very easy for that to happen because it's so habitual. But if you become aware of that and you realize, no, this isn't a good thing to do, and I want to stop doing that, and I want to do the opposite. So it takes effort in the beginning, and maybe for quite a while, but eventually that becomes a habit. You can make a new habit of seeing positive things and expressing positive things about people, rather than criticizing and judging them. Number 6 is called unskillful attention, or sometimes it's called improper attention. We could also call it obsessive thinking. Okay, so we've probably all had an experience of this. So if there's an object of attachment or an object of aversion, your mind will keep thinking about that again and again and again. Not that you do it deliberately or consciously, but it's just a habit. Okay, so you see some attractive person, maybe you fall in love with them, and then afterwards, even when they're not there, but at other times, thoughts of that person keep coming up. And your mind keeps thinking about that person and the wonderful qualities they have, and then adding on more qualities, and then fantasizing about getting close to that person and having this experience and that experience, and so on and so forth. So you're making a whole story, writing a whole novel about, that person and your relationship with them. Okay, so that's obsessive thinking. And the same thing can happen with someone we don't like. Yeah, we keep having thoughts about that person, adding on more things about them that we don't like, building up a case. Yeah, just like in law, you build up a whole case about a person that you think is a criminal and should be put away in jail. Yeah, so finding all this information, and much of it is fantasized, may not be true at all. We're just adding things on. Okay, so the solution to that would be to observe it happening. Use mindfulness. Mindfulness means paying attention to what's going on in your mind. Notice when this is happening in your mind. Recognize that it's unhelpful and it's harmful. It's just increasing the delusion rather than decreasing it. And stop it. Just say to yourself, stop. I'm not going to think like that anymore. Turn your attention to something else, either something neutral, something that isn't going to stir up your afflictive emotions, or turn your attention to the opposite. Instead of thinking negative things about that person, the person you find annoying, look at good qualities about them, good things that they have done. So there's so many Dharma methods, Dharma techniques for counteracting negative thinking, disturbing thoughts and emotions. But we have to catch it, because otherwise our mind just keeps going in that direction. So, yeah, we're almost out of time now. I had several more slides. I was going to start talking about the 12 links, but yeah, we got carried away. But these are important topics. Delusions, attachment, anger, jealousy, and so on. This is a really, really, really important topic. So it is important to take time looking at it. So like I mentioned, you might, if you have access to the book Wisdom Energy, this is one of the first Dharma books we ever published, teachings by Lama Yeshe and Lama Zopa Rinpoche. So in that book, there's a talk by Lama Yeshe about these 6 factors. I can't remember the title of it, but you'll probably recognize it if you look at the table of contents. 6 causes of delusions, or 6 factors that cause delusions to arise in our mind. So Lama Yeshe is always, very amusing and very entertaining and very clear when he talks about things. So I recommend looking into that. And then I also mentioned that in my book, How to Meditate, there's a whole section on working with disturbing emotions or negative emotions. So you can find more information there about how to work on them. And so a lot of the methods in Buddhism are how to work on your disturbing emotions by yourself, on your meditation cushion. Yeah. But sometimes that may be hard to do. So if you're having difficulty with a particular disturbing emotion, and you have, can't do it on your own, it's fine to seek help. So there's teachers or spiritual friends, your Dharma friends. Talk with them, try to get help. Okay, so next week, we'll start looking at the 12 links. And if you haven't already read that section of the easy path, then please do so. It starts on page 139. That's a difficult topic too, but I'll do my best to make it clear for you. And if, if you go to the last slide, some homework for next week. Yeah, so at least 3 times before the next class, meditate on either the antidotes to attachment or the 6 causes of delusions. So go over those points again to get more familiar with them and see how to apply them in your life. And then in your daily life, look out for experiences of anger and attachment coming up in your mind, and try to recognize these 6 causes, how these 6 causes, you may not notice all of them, but try to at least see some of them, how they can contribute to the arisal of these afflictive emotions in the mind. So the more we can understand the causes of afflictive emotions and work on those causes, the less chance there will be for our mind to get caught up in these afflictive emotions. So that's very helpful for us. So we've run out of time, so we'll do the dedication prayers to dedicate the merit, the positive energy from participating in this session. So we share the merit with all sentient beings and praying for the long lives of our spiritual teachers. Due to the merits of these virtuous actions, may I quickly attain the state of a Guru Buddha and lead all living beings without exception into that enlightened state. May the supreme jewel bodhicitta that has not arisen arise and grow, and may that which has arisen not diminish, but increase more and more. Incomparably kind and supreme Tenzin Gyatso, the wish-fulfilling, wish-granting jewel, source of every benefit and happiness in this world, may you have a long life and all your holy wishes be spontaneously fulfilled. You who uphold the seduer's moral way, who serve as the bountiful bearer of all, sustaining, preserving, and spreading Manjunath's victorious doctrine, who masterfully accomplish magnificent prayers, honoring the three jewels, Savior of myself and others, your disciples, please, please live long. Okay,